an Eagles game day. We've only got 20 of these a year, John McMullen. And as a matter of fact, for Birds 365, we have like 5. We've got the 3 preseason games, 1 Monday nighter versus the Cowboys game 3, 1 Thursday nighter versus the Buccaneers game 6. All the rest of the Eagles game days fall on weekends when we're not here. So this is one of 5 times. We've already used up one last week. We got one more today. Actual game days for the Philadelphia Eagles that we're here on Birds 360.
You know, flex scheduling comes into it, Jody. So if they're better than expected, and if they're as good as they looked against the Patriots, who knows? Second half of the season, we might have a lot of night games. But yeah, for me, it's great, those day games. I don't know. Do people like primetime games? I don't know. I never like them. I like football at 1 o'clock. That's my preference. I think that it's got a football feel about it on Sundays. But obviously,
all us old school guys are like that. Give me my football on Sunday afternoon. I'll take 4 o'clock. I prefer 1, but 4 o'clock is fine. Yeah, no, nighttime is not for football. It is for broadcast networks that put money in teams' pockets. I readily admit to that.
They need the primetime ratings, so it's understandable from their perspective. They're paying billions of dollars, and they want primetime viewing, and they get it, and the NFL delivers. So that's why we are where we are. But I don't know, especially in the autumn, when you hear John Pacenda's voice. I just think 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon. That's what I think about football. You're right. It's probably old school.
If you are an East Coast team, yes, you want that game at 1 o'clock. Now, for those who like to get down to the game and begin their celebrations, sometimes it's a little early to start drinking at 10 a.m., but I think I have faith in Eagle fans that they will get it done, not have an issue with. How many 1 o'clock games do they play? Like 10 out of 16, 11 out of 16?
A lot. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but a lot. And that comes down to the fact that, remember, the Eagles have been a marquee team in this league for a lot of years. So they would have a lot of primetime games. And, they fell on hard times last season. And that's what happens. You're sort of got to build yourself back up. It's almost like rebuilding an organization, rebuilding a team. What's up against Nick Sirianni? And when you're good again, because of the passion of this fan base, they're going to have a lot of primetime games again. But right now, people going in the season, they see rookie head coach. We've talked about this a lot. That's all it comes down to. They see rookie head coach, young, unproven quarterback, and they think, okay, they're not going to be a good football team. And I think they're missing some of the context, starting with the offensive and defensive lines, which are really, really good. Now, injuries always can play a part in this, especially with older players. We know this. We went through it last year with Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks. But if guys like that are out there, and Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham on the defensive side, Javon Hargrave, who, tweaked his ankle this week, so he's having a great camp. If those guys are out there the majority of the time, you're pretty good. If you can block people and you can rush the passer, you're going to have a chance to win some games. I'll just say that.
And that's certainly what we're hoping for with this year's Eagles team. All right, John, let's start with what is actually the hard news over the last 24 hours. And that's the fact that Tyree Jackson, who you've been pretty impressed with in preseason and the practices and what he's shown as far as his growth in the tight end position and his athletic ability out there. We've debated on how the Eagles will handle him this year. Do you keep him on the 53? Then do you try and get him onto the practice squad? Are you going to have to carry him all year? If Zach Ertz is traded between now and the beginning of the season, it changes Tyree Jackson's status considerably. Well, right now, Zach Ertz is still here, and Tyree Jackson is not. Injured yesterday, broke a bone in his back, but it's not going to be the type of injury where surgery is required. But the immediate approximation of time he's going to be out is 8 to 10 weeks, which is a fairly big chunk of time. With the juggling of the rosters and the rules in place, give me your best guesstimate as to how the Eagles are going to handle Tyree Jackson, working under the assumption that the original diagnosis of 8 to 10 weeks is accurate.
Yeah, I think it becomes somewhat of a difficult decision If certainly if Zach Ertz is here, if Zach Ertz isn't, and the Sam Bradford situation manifests itself at tight end somewhere around this league, and he's moved late, I don't think it's that big of a problem. You just keep him on the back end of the roster. You put him on the 53, then you simply shift him to IR, and you can bring him off when he's healthy, and everything's copacetic. It's a little bit more difficult if Zach's going to be here. You're going to keep Zach, you're going to keep Dallas Goedert, and you're probably going to keep, obviously, Richard Rodgers. Although, as a vested veteran, you have that trick where, okay, if Richard is on the 53 for week 1, his salary for the entire season is guaranteed. So they could try to play that game and release him. As Dave Zangaro mentioned, and hat tip to him, he's a vested veteran, so he doesn't have to go through waivers. So you can have, they did this with Creban LeBlanc last year. You can have that kind of wink deal. Say, okay, we're going to release you. We're going to bring you back in week 2. And remember, as good as Richard Rodgers was for the Eagles last year, he's been on the open market a lot and hasn't drawn a lot of attention because teams in this league get enamored with height and athleticism and ability to stretch the field at that particular position. That's not just Richard Rodgers. He's sort of a serviceable guy. You think that is exactly what Tyree Jackson is. So people have seen Tyree Jackson and they see 6'7", and they see 250 pounds, and they see the athleticism, and they say, oh, that's a guy might want to take a shot at. So in a lot of ways, I think he's more difficult to get through waivers than it would be to just release Richard Rodgers. So, where are the Eagles? Are they okay with just a redshirt season? The problem with that is if they put him on injured reserve before the cut down to 53, he's done for the season.
Right.
Not that big of a deal from a playing standpoint, because I think people are skipping steps. He's a developmental project. He's where Jordan Mailata was early in his career. He's not ready to play this year. He's just got a huge upside for down the road, and you want to keep that upside because Zach Ertz isn't going to be here long term, even if he's going to be here this year. So, but the problem is if you just shut him down, if you put him on injured reserve, that means he can't practice all year. And you want a developmental guy being able to practice when he's healthy and ready to go. So that complicates things a little bit. I don't want to overstate it, though, because, in his second season, they had to put Jordan Mailata on injured reserve later in the season. It's probably week 10. I'm just going off memory. But it was a pretty significant chunk of the back end of the season. And he couldn't practice. And I said, well, that's not the best situation. But when you're in regular season mode, there's not a lot of time for the deep reserves anyway. You're just preparing for the next opponent week to week to week. Those guys are just on the scout team pretending to be somebody else. It helps, but I don't think it's that big of a deal if they do shut them down and just pick up the developmental project next spring. It'll be interesting. I think a lot hinges on Zach Ertz. A lot hinges on, can they convince Richard Rodgers of that scenario I just said with the wink deal? Look, Richard, hang out for a week. We're going to bring you back week 2. Then I think they just keep him on the 53. If not, they could shut him down. They could just put him on IR. Either way, he's going to be here. He's going to be with this organization.
Right. You mentioned the wink, nod deal with Rodgers, which makes sense. The only problem with it, and if the Eagles got so uppity about it, I think it would be their problem, not Richard Rodgers' problem. If you release a guy and another team wants to pick him up and pay him the same thing you were paying him, or even more, you can't blame the player for going, all right, Eagles, see you later, bye, and moving on to the next team, because you can do the wink, nod as long as you want, but if someone has a better opportunity, you can't hold them to it. Go, wait, we had a wink, nod. No. If somebody offers you a better deal, that's the only thing that matters. Now, the point you made about him being out there all off season, he was there all off season. The Eagles didn't sign him till later in the off season, so you can judge the interest of the rest of the league around him. All the other teams have had the chance to look at their other tight ends in maybe one or two situations, and that's all you need is one or two. they might see more of a need for Richard Rodgers. A whole bunch of teams are going to see less of a need for Richard Rodgers because they like the guys they have in camp and have had them in camp all year, so that they won't even think twice about a Richard Rodgers. But you never know because it only takes one. I'm with you. I think that Tyree Jackson's future will probably be decided more by Zach Ertz than anything else, and or the health of Dallas Goedert or Richard Rodgers. One of the two of those guys get hurt, and they're going to be missing time as well. Then I think that would affect Tyree Jackson's status. But if all three of the other tight ends are healthy when we get to that last cut, yeah, I think they might be forced to stash Richard Rodgers on the full year IR, because at least you're keeping him. Then you know you're not risking anything. You need all three of your tight ends. If Nick Sirianni is running that much more 12 in practice, assuming that everybody's going to be healthy, to make the switch back at that late stage of the preseason, I don't think would be a smart move. So that'll be determined by whether Zach Ertz is still an Eagle Green and the health of the other two Eagle tight ends more than anything else.
Yeah, and something else I should put in, the Eagles really like Jack Stoll as well, an undrafted free agent. Now, they would like to get Jack Stoll on the practice squad, obviously, and they can get Jack Stoll on the practice squad. But if you want to play those games with Richard Rodgers, remember, your third tight end's not going to play a lot. Even if you play a lot of 12 personnel, you're not going to see major snaps unless somebody gets hurt. So you can keep Jack Stoll on the 53 as well, if you wanted that extra tight end, a healthy tight end, and you can play that game with Richard Rodgers and simply make the move of putting Stoll on the practice squad when you bring Richard Rodgers back. So there's a lot of moving parts. The problem is they don't want to put Tyree Jackson on waivers, so they're not going to do it. So to them, it comes down to, is he going to be on the 53? And then we move him to injured reserve, or we're just going to put him on injured reserve, not worry about it. He's a developmental guy, as I said. I do think people are assuming, oh, we're going to get Tyree Jackson. Not all people, some people. He's going to be a part of the offense. I don't think he's going to be a part of the offense at any time this year. He's not ready, but he's got tremendous, tremendous upside. And this is about 2022, 2023, when Zach Ertz isn't going to be here and Richard Rodgers isn't going to be here. So you got to keep him here, and he's going to be a part of this offense down the road. That's the Eagles' plan. So they just got to juggle this, and they're going to make the right decision for how they feel. And basically it comes down to how valuable is it being on the scout team? How valuable is it being out there practicing versus just being off to the side doing mental reps? You can catch footballs. You can condition, you can do all that stuff. You just can't be involved in the teamwork and that kind of stuff.
All right. One question about tonight, what we've got coming up, the exhibition game against the Patriots. A little different than last week. Last week, Steelers came to town. Eagles won the first half, which is usually a more important half of any exhibition games, because most of your regulars, if they're going to get action, gets the action in the first half, which is certainly the way it went between the Eagles and the Steelers. So, yeah, they lost 24-16, but they won the first half, which certainly balances the scales. We know the Steelers from having watched them all last year, and after they showed up and we got a chance to see some of the players, we knew that much more. But going in, we didn't know as much about the Steelers as we surely did about the Eagles. This week it's the Patriots, and you had an up-close and personal look at the Patriots the last couple of days with the joint practices. How does an exhibition game play the week after you've had joint practices as compared to other preseasons when the team just comes in? Usually are AFC teams. This year, all three Eagles preseason games are against AFC teams. As a matter of fact, it's kind of weird with the Jets next week, and we'll talk about this plenty next week. They play the Jets in preseason. They're going to practice with the Jets for a couple of days prior to the preseason. Oh, and then they play the Jets during the regular season as well. The biggest game that matters will be the fourth time the teams meet during the year. 2 shared practices, an exhibition game, and then a regular season game. What is this week's preseason game going to be like? How different is it because the two teams practice together twice leading up to it?
Well, I think it becomes less important, unfortunately, for the fans who want to see the first team for a larger majority of the time. I think Nick Sirianni said this and was honest about it. Look, I do more in practice as far as showing his offense. He's talked a lot about he thinks he has an advantage, at least early in the season, because nobody around the league knows what they're going to run from an offensive or defensive perspective. Now, look, I think it's a little bit overrated. I think he's right, but it's only probably going to be for 2 or 3 weeks, and then people get the film and they'll start adjusting and they'll start realize, okay, here's what the Eagles are going to do. But it is an advantage for week 1, and he's made it very clear that he and Jonathan Gannon on the defensive side of the ball are going to be very vanilla. So when we're at practice and we get to see him against the Patriots, we get to see more of the offense, believe it or not, than in a real preseason game. So it's less important when you have those joint practices before the game. And when the head coach admits that in public, it kind of tells you where they are. And it's a number of different reasons. I know Doug Peterson used to tell me, look, in a practice, you could script what you want to work on. You got to hope, you got to cross your fingers that comes up in a game if you want to work on a particular thing. So a lot of coaches value those joint practices more than preseason games. I know my buddy Colin Thompson, because he's, Carolina Panthers tight end, he's one of those guys fighting for a roster spot. So preseason games mean so much to those types of players. And he never liked hearing that. And but I'm saying that's the way coaches think now. I mean, they're paying attention. So be on your best when you're in those joint practices. If you're that type of bubble player, would be my advice. And Nick Sirianni came out and didn't even bother doing it off the record. He said it on the record. He said the exact same thing.
And, oh, by the way, key element to it is the joint practices that the Patriots and the Eagles are running together. There's no film on that. You just go out and do what you want to do. You put in the plays that you want to put in. You work on what you want to work on. And you have faith that the other team and the Patriots, they don't play this year. So it would be the advantage of them knowing what the tendencies are on either offense or defense for the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, they're kind of held under wraps. They're not going to go out and discuss. They're not going. As soon as the practice, Belichick's not getting on the phone with the Jerry Jones and telling, here's what the Eagles are going to do this year. That's not happening. When you play the game on Thursday night, it's going to be on the NFL Network. So anything you do is going to be out there for another team to grab the film of and evaluate and remember, and it could come back to help them at a future date. It's kind of like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in co-practices stays in co-practices. There's no sharing of information. And the one thing this new Eagle coaching staff seems to be leaning toward, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, certainly Gannon more so than Sirianni, deception is going to be a key. They think they're going to surprise some people this year. So keeping what you want to do under wraps seems to be important to the Philadelphia.
Yeah, and Nick Sirianni said what you just said. What stays in Vegas, that the old adage, I can't even think about it now, and you just said it. But the point is, Jody, and he said the same thing. We're talking about, and people laugh when you say trust with Bill Belichick, because of his history. But the Eagles trust the Patriots in that fact that when you put together your preseason schedule, I think a lot of people don't realize you're negotiating with teams near you. Everybody wants to stay close to home. So the Eagles want a good relationship with the Patriots and want a good relationship with the Jets. They want these, and obviously they played the Jets in the preseason since the beginning of time, it seems like. They have a good relationship with these organizations. This is the third time the Patriots have been in since the Chip Kelly era. I mean, they do this a lot, and it's for that reason. Jeffrey Lurie obviously gets along with Robert Kraft. Howie Roseman has a tremendous relationship with the Patriots. So the organizations get along. And, Nick Sirianni said, one team's going to get this film. Every team's going to get the film on Thursday night. He said the exact same thing.
Well, smart minds think alike. That's why I'm a Sirianni fan.
Well, I assumed you read the transcript. That's why.
I hadn't. It's just
we said the exact same thing, but before you, Jody. So, but I believe you because I trust you. We have a good relationship. just like the Patriots and Eagles.
There you go. It's the Mac and Mac guys. All right, we'll spread that trust coming up next. Our first guest is a guy who's going to be a little busy tonight. McMullen's going to be down the press row from him in the booth, in the press box, in the booth tonight on the Eagles television network. Is going to be Ross Tucker. He'll be on the call with Scott Graham on the Eagles preseason game coverage. Former NFL offensive lineman standout Ross Tucker scheduled to join us next right here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.